Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. It's so nice to see you all. Come on in, make yourselves comfortable. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think some of us are joining from Africa, so we've got a lot of different time zones here this morning. It's so nice to see you all. We are at our Trashion Against Fast Fashion event, so making sure we're in the right place. Awesome to see you. I would love it if you guys have a moment to share where you're joining from. So you can either type it in the chat or you can change your name is probably even the better way to do that. Update your name and let us know the location you're in, maybe the country or the city. Or you can just type it in the chat. Or you can type it to me and Sarah and we can update your name in the chat. Awesome, awesome. Now, I do have a couple of quiz questions just to get us started and warmed up for our event while we wait for everybody to join us. So for these ones, I think the easiest thing to do is just to type our answers in the chat and let us know what you think. Now, if you're a whole school, you can also, pull your students and let us know kind of which answers are more common. So my first question here is I just want your students to describe their general shopping habits. Do they A, rarely buy things, or B, do they only buy the things that they need? Or C, do they buy objects that they want? Or D, are they like big shoppers? So what do we think? We can put it in the chat. I kind of wanted to see where we were all at in terms of shopping before we got started here today. So A, B, C, or D, you can type more than once if you want to. Our presenters as well, you are welcome to go ahead and type in the chat too if you want to let me know what your shopping habits look like. I would be interested to see that. And just from my side, I can let you guys know, I like to think I'm between a B and a C. I try not to buy things unless I really need them, but sometimes it's a little bit hard. Yeah, some B's, some D's, awesome. Oh, got a couple more people coming in here. One of our schools is saying B, only things they need. That's really nice to see. I can tell you I know way too many people that are big shoppers that would say that they're D. So Jenna, I feel you. We all have a few. B was the most popular for our grade 6 students. Awesome. That's really great. Only buying things we need. Lots wish they were a Z. Yeah, that's true. That's great. Okay, so that's really good. I feel like that's like a good sign that we're like trying really hard not to buy too much stuff. B, but C once in a while. Yeah, Amani, we're the same. Maybe we'll have to do a secret shopping trip when we're in Dubai this year. Okay, let's try the next one. Oh, also, I did want to show you, in case you guys are wondering, why do I have a picture of a pirate ship on here? This is actually a mall near where I live, so it's one of the biggest malls in North America. It's so big, there's a pirate ship inside of the mall. So if you think maybe North Americans have a bit of a problem with shopping, yeah, that's how big our malls are, in case anybody doesn't know about it. All right, how about this one, clothing? Because today we're talking about fast fashion. We're talking about buying new clothes. How often do you buy new clothes? Now, thrifting or buying secondhand does not count. I just want to know how often you buy new clothes. Is it about once a week, about once a month, about once a year, or do you never ever buy new clothes and you only buy secondhand? Now, my goal for me is to go for D. I'm not quite there yet. I think I'm at about a C, but I do my best to buy secondhand. Some B's and C's. Yep, B's and C's. That's good to see. Is there anybody in the meeting today that's wearing secondhand clothing right now? I thought about it, but instead I went with my decarbonized shirt. Be cool if we had some people wearing secondhand clothes. A and B, yeah. A and B. Oh, okay, we got a real mix. A lot of B's, about once a month. I'd say that's probably the norm for people in Canada buying new clothes. Okay, and I have one more question while we wait for the last of our schools to join in. Which of the following do you think you do the most? So we all know about the 3 R's. I added 4 R's into this one. So would you say that you most often reduce? So you just don't even buy that new thing, don't even use that new thing. Do you reuse? So when something's done, you use it in a new way. Do you recycle? So putting something in the blue bin, or rot? Do you compost? Which of these do you think is the most common thing that you do? Now, for me, I would say I try really hard to reduce and recycle. I'm still not very good at reusing. So we're going to learn about a couple of different ways that we can reuse some of our stuff today, which is great for me. I don't know if any of you guys are the same. We got a lot of C's, a lot of recycles. Recycling is great. That's a great way to give new life to stuff that we've used before. An even split with one of our classes. Yep. Okay. And I know for D, for composting, a lot of us actually don't even have the option to compost where we're at. So that might be something that we can look at in some of our schools after today's event, right? Composting is a great way to get rid of some of our waste. Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for participating in the chat. The chat is a great way to get your questions and your comments across. We love seeing them. So make sure that you leave that chat box open so that you guys can participate today. And I would like to officially welcome you to the start of our Trashion Against Fast Fashion event. It's so nice to see you all today. I'm super happy that you're all taking the time to learn a little bit more about this today with me, because this is one of our events that's really close to my heart. So I'm so happy. Thank you so much for joining us. And let's get started. So I would love to begin with a land acknowledgement. So I acknowledge that I'm joining from Amiskwaciwâskahikan. This is on Treaty 6 territory, and this area that's colonially known as Edmonton, Alberta, has been a traditional gathering place and traveling route to many peoples, including the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and the Nakota Sioux. And since we're joining on a virtual platform, I also want to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the traditional territories that we're all joining from across the country and around the world. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, First Nations people that call this land home. Now, this Friday is called International Buy Nothing Day, and it's kind of the reason we're doing this event. Our event today is hopefully going to help equip you with some skills to fight consumerism in your own lives, but your actions can go even farther than this. So I really challenge everyone participating to think about the connections between the objects that you buy and the land that they come from. It's really important that we all try to shift our view away from looking at the earth as a resource that we can consume and looking more about that partnership that we share with the land, the water, and the air around us. Challenging ourselves to shift our perspectives of the things that we buy is going to bring us closer to understanding and living in relationship to the earth, much like the traditional peoples from around the world have been doing for time immemorial. Now, we have a really full event today. We have really three guest speakers. Our friends from the Philippines, unfortunately, are not able to make it because it's 10 a.m. for me, almost 11 p.m. for them, but they did send us a great video. We will have a little bit of time at the end of the event for some facilitated discussion. So during the event, if you have any questions that pop up, please type them in the chat. If we don't get to them during the presentations, we will definitely make sure we answer them at the end of the event. So it would be great if our teachers joining could take some time to develop a couple good questions, because our speakers have so much knowledge that they would love to share with you all today. Now, I'm just going to take a moment to welcome both of our speakers before I pass it over to Jacob. So Jacob is up first. Jacob provides direct support to educators and school boards and engage with partners while facilitating green learning's workshops and challenges. Sharing his passion for the environment through education, Jacob has brought learners to the outdoors and the outdoors to learners. Sparking curiosity and a desire to take action, Jacob works to equip learners and educators with the tools and community for making positive change. Good morning, afternoon, Jacob.
Hello, thank you. Happy to be here. Excited to talk with everybody today.
Awesome. And our second speaker today is Maximiliano Di Maria. He's a chemical engineer with nearly 20 years of experience in the industry. He's been working in the textile industry for nearly a decade. During his 7 years at Texcom, he's been responsible for implementing various initiatives related to sustainable production practices. This has helped them become suppliers to leading international brands such as Nike, Adidas, Zara, Puma, and many others. So hello, Max. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Rebecca. Thank you for your introduction.
You're very welcome. Thank you to both of you for being here and everybody that's joining us live on YouTube and here on Zoom. I'm going to pass the microphone now over to our first presenter, Jacob, to share about the circular economy.
Awesome. Thanks, Rebecca. And just give me one moment as I get myself kind of set up here. But As Rebecca said, I'm going to be talking a bit today about circular economy, maybe a little bit of the learning that kind of goes behind some of the things that we're going to talk about as we get into further kind of conversations today. But I'm very excited to be joining and to kind of be able to talk about something that I too share a passion for, being very mindful of kind of how we're consuming and sort of taking a little more stock in what we do with those kind of everyday purchases and things like that. But without further ado, I also want to start my presentation today with a land acknowledgement to acknowledge that I'm speaking today from what we call Hamilton, Ontario. And this is land that was acknowledged in the uh, Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Agreement, which was made between the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe people, that was to share and care for the lands around the Great Lakes. And as from my picture here, which isn't really from this time of the year, a little earlier in the summer, we haven't quite lost our leaves yet, but I love the land and the waters around me, and I want to do as much as I can to kind of take care of those resources. And having such an amazing group that's coming in from so many different places today, while we might not be sharing and caring for these Great Lakes kind of resources, I think we can extend that to all these kind of lands and waters that we have around us. So something just to kind of keep in mind as we speak about, and I really like Rebecca's kind of point about thinking about where these things that we purchase kind of come from. And so I'm also coming today from an organization called Green Learning. And so what we do is we create free online education programs that are about the energy, climate change, and green economy. Today, we're kind of focusing in on that green economy and circular economy stuff. And then what we really, a big goal of ours is not only to kind of have these lessons and opportunities to learn, but to try to connect you to things that you can do as a student or as a class or as a community to kind of take action to help work towards solutions and kind of working towards making positive change in these kind of areas. And so I want to start today with a true or false question for our group. And so it's going to be kind of checking our knowledge a little bit, starting to think about getting our brains working around clothing waste. And so the question is, plastic makes up over 50% of the materials that we use to make our clothes globally. So I'll say it one more time. So when we're making our clothes around the world, plastic takes up 50% or more of that material that we use to make these clothes. Maybe we'll give it another 10 or so seconds for everyone to get their ideas in.
This is a tricky question. We got such a split on the answers.
Yeah, there's quite the split on the answers here. So we're thinking plastic makes up over 50% of the materials that we use to make our clothes globally. All right, I think we've got most of our group in here. Okay, so let's see what everyone had to say. So it looks like we have a little bit more of our group is leaning towards true, that it is in fact true that plastic makes up over 50%. And if you said that, you would be correct. So it is true. It's actually approximately 60% of all the materials that we're using to make our clothes around the world are plastic. And so common ones that we see are things like polyester, nylon, and acrylic. Those might even sound familiar to you. And many of these plastics over time, they kind of end up in our environment. And this happens in a few ways. I'm sure you've seen kind of pieces of clothing along the street or litter and things like that. But it also happens with things called microplastics. And so that's when there are these plastics that are in our clothes, when we wash them, when we wear them, these kind of things, those little tiny fibers kind of break off and they end up in our environment. So this is something that affects all of us and it's very present around the world. And so how do we start shifting towards a system or doing different things that can kind of help us to alleviate this problem? And so the maybe not the most exciting kind of start is thinking about our economy. So what I'm going to talk a little bit about is something called a circular economy in a moment. But before we get into that, I think it's important that we kind of define what an economy is before we get too much into it. And so an economy, and you might have heard this before, but it's the wealth and the resources of a country or an area especially when we're talking about the production and the consumption of goods and services. So this is the producing things that we kind of buy and use or sell and things like this. But the way that I like to kind of boil it down and think about it is it's how people make money and it's how people spend their money. And it's kind of all those things that go on in the background for that. And so I'm going to start talking about the linear economy, which is a system that we might not necessarily know too much, but we are definitely familiar with because many of us live in these kind of economies, as well as a circular economy. And when I start talking about those two, I just want you to think about what you think might be more sustainable and kind of some of those whys as to why one of these kind of stands out over the other. And so the first one here, our linear economy, and speaking from Hamilton in Ontario, Canada, this is how the economy of Canada works for us. But we start with our globe, our Earth, and what we do when we're kind of making products. And let's say we'll go through the example of a t-shirt, a nice and simple t-shirt. So let's say we have our start. We're going to be taking some of the resources that we were kind of talking about earlier, taking some resources from the earth that we're going to use to then make our t-shirt. So once our t-shirt is made, we can then distribute it. This is done many different ways. I'm sure people know through ships and trucks and trains and many different things. But they distribute it out to people who then use that t-shirt, wear it, and maybe once it starts to get a couple holes in it, maybe I was having some food and I spilled some pasta sauce all over my t-shirt. And so it gets to the step where it's time for me to dispose of it. And that's the end of the line with our linear economy. So we start with our resources on our earth, we make our thing, we get it out to the people can then use that t-shirt, and then eventually it gets disposed of. And this might end up in a couple different places, but generally we kind of end up in a landfill. And that's where that t-shirt spends the rest of its life there. And so with a circular economy system, we similarly are taking resources from the earth, but it's also an opportunity to kind of reclaim material from waste. So that t-shirt that might have had some pasta sauce kind of stained on it, maybe that could be reclaimed and a bunch of that material could be used to make another t-shirt in the future. Now, when we get to making our kind of t-shirt or our resource or whatever we're going to be doing, it's also an opportunity to kind of remake old ones that maybe only a couple parts are missing, and opportunities like this. The next one here is our distribute. So again, we're taking our product, getting it out to the world, but this is also an opportunity to think about getting it out into the world using more sustainable means. Maybe electric trains or electric vehicles could be something to consider about how we can kind of reduce the impact we're having by getting them out there. Now, the next one, which is use or reuse and repair, I think this is kind of where us as sort of the consumer, or us the person that's kind of buying these things, this is where a lot of our power is, I feel, especially in the day to day. Because not only can I kind of use the thing that I bought, but maybe I ripped a hole in my t-shirt and I can repair that and maybe put a kind of stylistic patch over top that lets me kind of add some flair to it as well. But this is where we can really put some effort into kind of repairing, extending the life of the products that we have, whether that's clothing or otherwise as well. And then when we start thinking about disposing it, it's being more selective. Oh, sorry. So here's that repair, reuse, and replace things. But when we get to disposing, it's being a little bit more selective. So like I mentioned earlier with that pasta stained t-shirt, we might only kind of get rid of the one part that's sort of messed up and might not be able to be reused, and we can reuse a whole bunch of that other material. And so as we're completing our lap around the circle here, this is kind of where we can start to really see and make really big and impactful change. And so you might be familiar or heard a word before, something along the lines of systemic change. And so that's when you're making change it's change to an entire system. And so by doing that, which takes a lot of work, of course, and a lot of kind of steps to get there, but it allows us to sort of refresh and look at all of the different steps that are taking place and take a lot of action and effort to making them much more sustainable. And so this is, like I mentioned a second ago, this is definitely very big and a lot to kind of take in, but we'll talk a little bit more in a second too about what we can do as individuals. And so while I may have made it a little bit obvious, I would imagine that we kind of the correct answer here, if you want to put it that way, is that a circular economy system is just much more sustainable. It's being a lot more kind of mindful in each of those steps about what we can do to sort of take action, where we can kind of take opportunity to be more sustainable, like using electric vehicles, for example, for transportation, but really also kind of being more mindful of our sort of responsibility in this system. So making sure that we reuse things when we have the opportunity, repair things like our clothing or anything else as well to kind of extend the life of those products, and just being kind of mindful as we make decisions. And so that sort of links in with what can we do as individuals? What can you do being a student, maybe sitting at home or sitting in your school? And so the first one that I really like to kind of bring forward, I think this is very relevant for any environmental issues, but just being mindful. And so this can be things like, if you do need to purchase something new, being kind of mindful to make a choice for something that's more sustainable, maybe made of recycled materials, or making kind of the choice that maybe you don't necessarily need that thing. So just kind of being mindful, taking an extra second. One of my favorite things to say is just take a beat, think about it a little bit. You can probably wait till tomorrow, those kind of things like that. But another thing that we can do is to educate others. And being here today, I think, is an amazing step in this, is that you can kind of go on and share the things that you learned today, as well as anything else that you've kind of learned with others. It's always great to empower the people around you. And the last one, and maybe the most exciting and kind of fun, is just get creative. I think there's a lot of opportunity in reusing and kind of remaking things. The little kind of comic sort of thing here is taking a pair of old pants and turning it into a bag. There's a lot of excitement and kind of expression that can happen in getting creative with things like our fashion. And so, with that, if you want to kind of continue this learning and bring it home, or maybe bring it into your school, Green Learning has some awesome kind of programs around Eco 360, which talks about like the circular economy and green economy. So for any teachers out there that might want to check it out, I'd encourage you to look into our Eco 360 challenge. But again, just kind of being mindful of really how you interact with the clothing and plastics around you, and taking that message to others. And with that, I want to thank you for listening to my presentation and joining today. And I'm excited to hear from our other kind of presenters for the rest, but I encourage you to check out the Green Learning website. And thanks for joining today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jacob. I hope, if we have a couple questions about the circular economy or the linear economy, or if you just barely got to touch on those couple of different actions you can take. So I hope if you guys have more questions about how you could get more involved, please type them in the chat. We would love to get to them. In the meantime, I am going to pass it over to our second presenter for the day, Maximiliano. You can go ahead and share your screen, and I'll pass you the microphone.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca.
You're welcome.
I will share my presentation.
Looks great.
Perfect. Okay, well, hello everyone. Today I'm going to share with you an overview of how fashion industry works, how it affects our natural environment, and some positive action that can help to reduce pollution worldwide. But before I start my topic, I would like to invite you to consider the following question. Do you know the exact cost of the clothes you are wearing at this moment? I guess your answer may be $100, $200, $300. Unfortunately, the real cost is much higher. Globally, the textile industry is the second largest consumer of water, the second largest emitter of greenhouse gases, and the leading user of chemicals. To bring an example, a polyester t-shirt may involve the use of 30 liters of water, generate nearly 10 kilograms of greenhouse gases, and involve more than 20 different chemicals. And I'm talking about only one t-shirt. Considering that dressing is a basic need to live in society, we as consumers should be more conscious of our future shopping decisions. Therefore, I would like to present you the key actors involved in this industry, some of the problems and consequences fashion produces, and how in Texcom we take actions to reduce them. Okay, in the first place, we meet fiber manufacturers. We know most of the garments are made of cotton, which is a natural fiber. Others are made of polyester, which is a synthetic fiber made from oil. But for example, with the cotton, the main problem is it requires extensive use of land and water, pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. Fortunately, there are initiatives like Better Cotton, which aims to improve practices in crop fields with the intention of assuring an effective use of resources. A successful example of this program has place in India last year, where certified fields achieved a 45% increase in productivity, an incredibly efficient water usage of nearly 50%, and a 53% reduction in pesticide use. It's for that I'm glad to announce that Texcom has been an active member of Better Cotton since 2020. Regarding polyester, it has a great virtue, its durability. Unfortunately, it becomes a serious matter because a simple bottle lasts 300 years to degrade in nature. 600 billion bottles are produced every year. Recycling, which is transforming an used bottle into a new one, seems to be the best known solution for society. However, it's estimated that recycled plastic material is around 10% worldwide. The lifetime of a bottle since manufacture till its final consumption is only 6 months. This means that out of 100 bottles produced, only one be made from recycled material within a year, while the remaining 99 will keep on polluting our planet. Here is where the textile industry takes a main role, providing a better option than recycling, through the transformation of these bottles into the yarn that will then compose the fabric to craft a t-shirt. This action has a name, is upcycling. Upcycling represents a better choice due to dual impact. In one hand, the complex process of producing a t-shirt generates more job opportunities. On the other hand, almost 30 half-liter bottles are needed to produce a t-shirt that will preserve a polyester around 5 years instead of only 6 months as a bottle itself. Over the last 5 years, thanks to the commitment to using recycled polyester as a raw material, Texcom has prevented that 80 million bottles contaminate our ecosystem. Okay, fabric manufacturers, as Texcom, enter on stage after fibers. They create the canvases that designers then use to create the garments. This stage involves complex and technological processes that consume a significant amount of resources. As a consequence, one of our challenges is to look for initiative processes. For example, using ultrafixation dyes for cotton fibers. These dyes are more efficient, enabling a 4% reduction in chemical usage, a 16% decrease in water consumption, and 21% less in the amount of dye required. Thirdly, we need to talk about the role of brands and the responsibility on how they propose trends and new habits through the clothes we wear. If we, as consumers, do not have access to accurate information, this presentation becomes meaningless. That is why brands should take all this action into transparent communication for all of us. To achieve this, we work on marketing and sales staff training for our clients. We also check social media platform clients to prevent the dissemination of inaccuracies or misleading information. And last, but very important, is the role of consumers. The impact of fashion does not end with the garment production. It continues at our homes. If we consider that a garment laundries consumes about 10 liters of water, and we estimate an average lifespan of 100 uses, we reach to a total of 1,000 liters of water. Necessarily, we made a conscious decision about our action a few years ago. We started thinking about how we could move beyond our factory doors to improve the life cycle of our products, with the clear purpose of boosting their durability and easy care. As a result, we offer easy care products that help to reduce the laundry frequency to 1/3, saving approximately 600 liters of water. To end, we have learning about the true cost of fashion. And a new question is crucial for us. What type of action should we take as consumers? Simple, we should be more conscious about shopping and maybe ask to ourselves if we really need what we buy. Why? Because we need nature to live, but nature does not need us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would just like to say, for me, those numbers were staggering. Not only the numbers of how impactful fashion can be, but of what a big difference a company like yours can make by choosing to do some of those initiatives. So I'm hoping everybody else was as blown away as I was, because those numbers were absolutely mind-blowing to me. So thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Yes, you're very welcome. Up next, I have a video from our friends in the Philippines who were unfortunately not able to make it. Oh, I would also like to share, we do have a thank you coming through on the YouTube for sharing that presentation. So while I share this next video, it's now a good time for you guys to maybe brainstorm some questions that you might like to ask one or both of our speakers. And just to give you a bit of an introduction to this video before I start it. Our friends at St. Joseph's Academy in the Philippines last year did a project where groups of students worked together to create fashion out of trash. So they called it a Trashion show. So the main objective was to kind of share this idea that we can upcycle, as Max had said, or recycle objects and reuse them in a way that's meaningful. So what I did was I went through their Trashion show, and I chose a few of the objects that I thought really stood out to me. You'll notice as we watch the video, they also share some ideas that they have about actions that students can take to make a bigger impact. So not only are you going to be able to see some beautiful fashion and some great creativity from students, but you'll also be able to hear some key impacts to climate change in the Philippines and things that you can do as well.
While we can't fight fast fashion alone, we can focus on the small things we can do, such as supporting sustainable clothing businesses. Now that online shopping is all the craze, especially in this time of pandemic, the rising problem of plastic pollution grows with it as well. With the millions of non-biodegradable single-use plastic used as packaging for the parcels, we get so easily distracted by what our world is already facing today. This dress is inspired by single-use plastics from packages that are just thrown away. Aside from that, it is also heavily inspired by travel patterns and clothes of the indigenous tribes here in the Philippines. Ever thought of where wastes go? We would not want them to be piled up. Through the Trashion project, Daniel was able to recycle while manifesting creativity. In fact, recycling is one of the most effective ways to reduce the number of wastes and to be clean and green. The use of Florsa clothing is nothing new. In the Philippines, resourceful women, especially in the barrios with limited resources, use flour sacks or katsa to make everything from cloth, diapers, handkerchiefs, skirts, blouses, or even curtains. Sadly, this indigenous practice is no longer as widespread as it was decades ago. The reason prompted Kimberly to bring traditional Filipino practice to the present and hopefully in the future. The upper attire is made out of red junk food wrappers while the pants is made of a sack of rice. His necklace is made out of different plastics with colors representing different symbols. His bracelet is made from alambre and open tab cans sprayed with the color gold, which represents the stars in the sky. She created her outfit out of dried leaves, which symbolizes the deteriorating status of the wilderness. The Colombo that cascades through the length of her gown symbolizes the culture of the Filipino. Onion and garlic nuts that represent the hard-working Filipinos, shells that give us a touch of the sea, and birds that represent the forgotten and now almost homeless creatures of the sky. Her inspiration for this dress is to raise awareness about endangered birds due to the environmental crisis. Defying gravity and flying for the endangered species with her exquisite gown entitled Flight of the Fight. We see that in today's generation, our throwaway culture is leaving a negative impact on the natural resources of the earth. From paper recycling to handicrafts, there are loads of uses for your old newspapers. It's time to get creative and save our planet's natural resources. Just like what Raven did for her Trashion project, where she was able to pull off this outfit with the creative use of newspapers. Her yellow vibrant outfit is made out of recycled materials from various households, and she hopes for everyone who sees her dress to become inspired to make their trash into something beautiful. Book pages turn into a whole fit. It was very sublime to be dressed in paper page print couture. Inspired by the knowledge inside of the book, the outfit will shout to everyone that our Lumad kababayans need education.
The outfit is composed of strips of recycled paper forming a tube top. Plastics and papers have been recycled and used in order for them to prevent the additional 40% of waste dumped in landfills. It is made of various plastic food packaging, allowing the colors of the rainbow, which signifies the fancy colorful feathers of the legendary bird. The last piece from the Adorno outfit is a voluminous mullet skirt. This piece is crafted to exhibit Adorno's ethnic elegance and majestic beauty. The bases were made from sack of rice, and the lining was made from old clothes. The sun design on the lower left corner of the skirt was created using pistachio and eggshells and plastic spoons, and the inalaman-inspired pattern was created using shampoo, sachets, and sequins. Because of climate change, higher temperatures change weather conditions over time and disrupt the natural balance. It can be a risk to human beings and all other forms of life on Earth. Colores y Patronas is a recycled material costume based on the clothes of Lumad. It was inspired by the colors and its pattern, and they believe that colors can speak stories and patterns that portrays the feeling that a person can envision. The environmental factors they've chosen are the geographical factors and the climate change that becomes a major threat to the livelihood of many indigenous people. It was made out of recycled materials such as old clothes, rice sack, old scrapbooks, and plastic seals. The environmental factor of this outfit is about the ocean. Overfishing, unsustainable fishing practices, and global warming are some contributing factors in the degradation of marine habitats and ecosystems. And they believe that destructing the ocean will have a possible negative effect not only on the marine life, but also in our country. One will never think that while helping their environment, especially using trash that usually litter the surroundings, young students could make such stunning masterpieces that could even battle the rumored beauty of Aphrodite.
Awesome. Okay. So I hope you all enjoyed that as much as I did when I got to view the entire event. I was like, that's only a small snapshot of some of them. So I was super blown away by the creativity of these students. I would love to hear if you wanted to share in the chat what you thought your favorite pieces were. And I'll say for myself, I think it's number 3 or 4 with like all the feathers. I was like amazed when I saw that one come up. So that would be nice to see. Okay, so we do only have about 5 to 10 minutes left in our live event. So if you do have questions, now is your chance to pop them into the chat. There is one that I have that I would like to ask. if either or both of you have thoughts on this, but the question is, do you think it's better to buy a natural fabric like cotton, even though it will wear out faster? Or is it better to do the synthetic fabric that will last longer, but could maybe have longer impacts on the environment? So which ones do you think is a better option and why?
I think I'll defer this to Maximiliano. I think he'll probably have a little better insight into the industry.
Yes, well, cotton, cotton degrade easier on nature. Not always is has less impact than synthetic fiber, because it depends a lot the origin. You know, if the origin of the cotton is from a crop field, that's don't have any warn about water usage or pesticide or herbicides, is the same, or is worse.
While we can fight fast.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think that's an important thing to think about, is where your cotton is coming from. And I think that's important, like with your company, trying to use that more sustainable cotton. I would also like to add, because I know our friends at Oceanwise would be upset if I didn't share this little thought, but when you wash your clothes that are made of synthetic fibers, like nylon or polyester, those tiny microplastics can come out in your wash and end up in our lakes and our rivers and our oceans. So washing your clothes in a bag that can hold on to those plastics, or washing them less, or washing them on cold, you know, if you do have those synthetic fibers, that is a way to make them a little bit more sustainable. Okay, our next question is, are there any brands that are moving towards sustainable cloth? So I know, Max, you did mention a few brands that are having some bigger impacts. Would you like to maybe speak to one or two of them?
Yeah, every big brand is working on it. For example, Nike, Adidas, Lacoste, they are working under programs that are reliable, such as recycling claim system, such better cotton. They work under reliable initiatives.
Awesome. Also, I feel like I need to mention a caveat for my Canadian English. I've been teased internationally before for saying Nike instead of Nike. So to all of our international friends joining us, we say Nike in Canada. I know that everyone else says Nike. I'm going to apologize for that here. Awesome. Okay, this next question, I don't know if either of you know this. How much oil is needed to produce polyester? Do either of us have any idea of that one? If not, I can also type it in the Google quickly while we're doing our next one.
Yeah, sorry, not from my neck of the woods.
No.
It's a tricky question. You can consider 1 kilogram of oil produce 1 kilogram of polyester.
Okay.
It's a mass balance, you know?
Yeah, so about a 1-1-1. That's a lot. Okay.
Yeah, because it's a mass balance. 1 kilogram is 1 kilogram, equal 1 kilogram, you know?
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Again, it's the same as your earlier presentation, the amount of water and land and oil that you need to produce clothing. We don't even think about it when all we see is shelves with clothes and we buy them. So it's really important to think about. Okay, how about this one? How can we tell if a brand is sustainable? Is there any place that we can look to see what brands are working on for sustainability?
Maybe while Max thinks on this one a little bit, I can speak at least to like the initial kind of interpretation of that. I think truthfully it takes a little bit of digging at sometimes, like some doing a little bit of research yourself, I think, to find a good kind of like real true answer to these kind of things. Something that exists that we bump into is greenwashing, which I very, very briefly kind of mentioned, but it's kind of the basis of presenting something that isn't very environmentally sustainable or conscious in a way that makes it look as though it is, which can be as simple as like having a shampoo bottle that's completely green because it makes you kind of think of green and the lands and oceans and things like that. So it takes a little bit. There might be a lot of things that are telling you that it's very sustainable, but sometimes it takes a little bit of looking into a little bit deeper. But I can pass it along to Max because Max might be able to expand on that a little bit as well.
Yes, if the brands are committed to comply with initiative for third party, you look for third party initiatives, not the initiative from the brand. Third party initiative like Zero Discharge, Blue Sign, or Ecotex. You have many initiatives to study.
Yeah, that makes sense. If the brand itself is promoting their initiatives, it's likely a form of greenwashing where they're pretending to be green. But if we're getting it from an outside source, it can be more trusted. That's really smart to think about. This next question, as you're chatting, I looked it up. How long does it take polyester to decompose? It says anywhere from 20 to 200 years for that to decompose. And our next question. Since so many clothing companies produce more than is needed, and these end up in landfills, what can be done to encourage these companies to produce less? It's a big question.
This is for Jacob and the customers' behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of different actions that can be kind of taken, but I guess this is going to sound fairly similar to a lot of different questions along the lines of like, what can we do to get these larger organizations to kind of take action? And they're truthfully kind of getting that word out and just making them aware that the consumer base and us as kind of individuals and as your community are really pushing towards these more sustainable actions. So that can be like writing letters or doing kind of campaigns around that. There's also like options for social media and all those kind of things. But truthfully, some of the biggest kind of strength you have as a consumer is where you spend your money. So if there are companies that you feel don't align with some of your personal kind of interests or things around sustainability, it's best for you to kind of steer away. And then them not getting that money is a pretty big message towards the fact that you're not so happy with that. And then so you can educate others so they make that similar decision. And that's kind of a lot of where our power as consumers lies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You hear a lot about people refusing to buy from brands that have unsustainable practices. So yeah, your money has power. So even though some of you may not be old enough to vote, you can vote with your money. That's a great one. Okay, last two questions, then we do have to do our wrap up. So how much fashion waste is recycled? And do you think that we could get government to implement incentives to use recycled materials? Do either of us have thoughts on either of those or both of those?
While I certainly am no representative of the government by any means, I can certainly speak just briefly kind of around that. That's certainly, it's a possibility, like the having incentives around things like these. We see incentives around like for helping to kind of bring in electric vehicles and things, like incentives around the cost, both for kind of producing the services that are needed to kind of sustain and maintain those vehicles, but also just for the individual, like as a consumer buying them. So we know that these kind of systems do exist and in those kind of sustainable fields. So it's certainly within reason, but as far as I know at the moment, I don't believe that we have any kind of incentives that are taking place, at least super kind of public knowledge, but in the sense that it's very possible and something, again, that would be always kind of encouraged through reaching out and letting them know that we want to see these kind of things as individuals and part of these governments.
Mm-hmm. And Maxi, I'm wondering as well, in Argentina, do you have government incentives for companies like Texcom to use recycled materials?
No yet.
No.
No yet. Unfortunately, no yet.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Okay, so I have a couple reminders and then I would love to get a last thought from both of our speakers, but I'm just going to share my screen quickly here. So this event that we're doing today is actually a part of our Decarbonize program, hence my Decarbonize t-shirt. So a lot of us that are joining us today, I know are already members of Decarbonize, so it's great to see. I wanted to give you all a reminder that if you want to learn more about big ideas like this and how you can make a change at home, we have a ton of information on how you can get involved in COP28 in Dubai. We leave soon, like a week and a half, and we'll be on the ground in COP talking to change makers, sharing these ideas with people who can make big differences in our countries and around the world. So if you want to get involved in that, we have all of these ways. I see Green Learning's e-cards are on here. As well, Texcom is actually supplying us with our decarbonized shirts for today. So it's a really great combination of all of our initiatives together. So please share this with your schools, share this with your siblings, share this with your friends. It would be great to get a bunch of students involved, from their homes so that they can share COP with us. Don't have time for this one, but one last reminder to sign up for our newsletter. So students as well, you're welcome to sign up. Teachers, if you haven't done so already, I think a lot of us have, make sure that you're registered for our newsletter so that you don't miss any of our, important stuff that's coming up. And I had one final question for both of our guests before we do our final sign off, and that is, what would you say is your last takeaway or the one thing you would like students to have in the front of their minds as they leave our event today?
Yeah, I can hop in. I think that the last takeaway from the event today, at least kind of like coming from Green Learning and my kind of perspective, is that I think that these, especially when we're talking about like circular economies and these kind of things, can feel really, really big and maybe out of reach for some of us, like as an individual. And so my big takeaway is to kind of focus on yourself and the things that you can impact and that's around you. So the decisions that you make, whether you're kind of like around the, we've talked about like, do I need this or do I not? Like those kind of things. But also start kind of thinking about who you can affect and how you can make some positive impact in your community around you. Thanks,
Wonderful.
Rebecca.
Maxie, how about you?
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you, Rebecca, for giving me this opportunity. For me, it's very important to be able to share these topics with youth, and I hope it has been helpful for them. And remember, great changes are made by the accumulation of small efforts. Keep doing. Thank you, Rebecca.
Wonderful. That is, I want to get a tattoo of that. That's so beautiful. Awesome. I wanted to thank both of you one more time so much for sharing all of your knowledge. Our teachers were asking for these presentations and videos, so I'll make sure to share them afterwards. And thank you to all of our schools joining us online and on Zoom. It's wonderful to see everyone. And I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, thanks for joining today.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Awesome. Bye. Thanks so much.